My name's Claire Duchesneau, and I'm a social worker at the Chronic Viral Illness Service. I've been working with patients with HIV for the last 30 years, and the last 20 years specifically with asylum seekers who come here and are diagnosed with HIV. It's been a great 30 years, and there's so much that I've learned over the course of that time. One of the things I've learned is about poverty. So many of our patients are dealing with poverty on a daily basis. I follow about twice the number of women than men, and these women have children, families. They're trying to help their families back home or support their children back in Africa or in Haiti or in other countries. And so anything we give them, anything, is perceived by them as a gift of love. It's a gift of survival. It's basic necessities that they find very difficult to afford when they come here and they have so little. Okay, I started my studies with political science and English literature and ended up at a very young age, about 21, at CBC in Montreal, working for Daybreak. And later on, I was a script assistant in television at CBC. But at some point, I wanted a new adventure. And I did end up being a canoeing instructor up in Algonquin Park in my transition period. And from then, I was a teacher for a while. And before I knew it, I was studying psychology. And just before I did a master's in psychology, the professor took me aside and said, "I think you should be a social worker." At which point I thought, what's a social worker? I had never met a social worker in my life. So I went and looked it up and thought, that's what I've been wanting to do all my life, be a social worker. And so I went back to school and did my master's in social work, and before I knew it, it was 1987, and I was assigned my very first AIDS patient. He was a lovely man, and I only met him maybe 4 or 5 times when he died. My heart was a little broken because I wasn't used to that whole story of meeting people and watching them die so quickly. And in the early days of AIDS, that's the way it was. That's the way it was for so many of my patients. But today, as you may know, people live long lives, and they live productive lives, and they have children, and they can do any job they want to do, and they can live very healthily. So it's a whole new ballgame. From the earliest days of the discovery of this epidemic and the first patients we saw, the cases we were dealing with were so complex. You were dealing with young people dying, stigmatization, people who were fearful of HIV. As a result, as a clinic, we had to work together. We had to help one another as a family. And very early on, we developed very respectful relations with one another. The doctors knew they couldn't work without the social worker. The social workers knew they couldn't work without the nurses. The pharmacists were your right-hand people. All in all, we just came very close together because we were all living chronic grief. I can remember once I was in a meeting. It was just a meeting of rounds, and somebody knocked on the door to announce that one of our patients had died. And we all sort of, stopped for a moment and took a deep breath and got back to the work we were doing. And about 15 minutes later, the same person knocked on the door to announce that another patient had died. I'll never forget that day because it was something that the average person wasn't living, that we were living, death and dying and funerals and dealing with young people grieving. I can remember patients saying to me, like, what music should I play at my funeral? Or they'd bring in a couple of shirts and say, should I wear this shirt in my coffin or this shirt in my coffin? It was different. It was not like any other department I had ever worked in a hospital. So from that day forward, we learned to trust our instinct and to value the moments and the times we had with our patients. The Helping Hands project is a wonderful project. Not only does it supply for people who are vulnerable and who have so little a gift of very practical and good items, but it does something more. It makes the patient feel special. It's a project that was started from the hearts of two medical students who really understood what it meant to be vulnerable. And they wanted to put back. They wanted to make a difference in the lives of other people. So it's not just something coming out of nowhere. It's coming out of a personal experience on both their parts. And we have embraced these young people, these medical students, with this beautiful project of Helping Hands, because we know that these are our future doctors, and what they have brought to us is a gift of love and a gift of respect for our patients. Please support them in any way you can. Thank you so much.